In continuation of our year-end review, today our focus is on the manufacturing sector. The industry was one of the sectors majorly hit by the disruptions arising from the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. And part of the measures taken to support players in the sector was the introduction of a 1 trillion naira facility for local manufacturing by the Central Bank, amongst others. How well did the sector fare this year? I'm being joined by one of the players in the industry, the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Protege Global Services Engineer Ademola Agoro. He is also the Vice President, Meter Manufacturers and Assemblers Association of Nigeria. Thank you very much, Mr. Agoro, for joining us on the program, and good morning and compliments of the season.
Thank you. Good morning.
So, as a player in the manufacturing industry in Nigeria, what was the year 2021 like for you in doing business? What was most challenging, and were there lessons learned?
Well, definitely year 2021 is a very challenging year, coupled with the fact of the pandemic all over the world and the problem of forex availability in the manufacturing sector, because most of us as manufacturers, we do not have enough forex because most of our raw materials comes from abroad. And because of that, we have challenges in bringing the raw material. It increased the cost of production. So definitely it's a lot of challenge, but the beauty of it is that it taught us to look inward and see how we can re-engineer some of the raw materials that we needed for our manufacturing. Thank you.
Now, coming from 2020, a year of pandemic, the sector performed relatively okay in terms of growth, with a real GDP growth of about 4.29% year on year. That was in the third quarter. How much of this performance would you attribute to perhaps the interventions by the central bank during the pandemic? And don't forget, this is irrespective of one of the challenges, and which is, of course, a major challenge that the sector faced during the year, which is the forex problem.
Well, sincerely, the Central Bank of Nigeria have done pretty very well. Most of the growth that you saw in the sector is because of the intervention of central bank from different sectors, from the power to health to different aspects of manufacturing. Most of this growth is because of the intervention of the central bank. They really, through the central bank, a lot of things that was able to be achieved from the manufacturing sector.
Now, the central bank, of course, tried to encourage banks to lend more to the real sector. How much of a support would you say the sector got from the banks in terms of lending?
Well, this is a very challenging question. When you see most of the lending of the central bank, it has to be guaranteed by the commercial bank. But the challenge that most of us have as manufacturer, if you want to borrow 1 billion naira or get the guarantee of 1 billion naira from commercial bank, the commercial bank will ask you to go and bring a guarantee, a fixed guarantee of over 150%. Another thing is that they ask you to come and cash back it, which is a major challenge. And it doesn't really allow the good intention of the central bank to be actualized in the manufacturing center. The central banks provided the money, but the commercial bank, because they needed those guarantees, most of those money is not accessible to the manufacturing sector. So what I would have loved to suggest is that they need to look at those financing structure very well so that the good intention of the federal government and the central bank can be actualized by the manufacturing sector. Thank you.
Now, there is a school of thought which believes that import prohibition and high import tariffs, which were put in place to enhance the growth of the sector, had not really achieved the objective and should be reviewed. What is your view on this?
Well, for me, it's a very good thing. There's no way you can develop your local capacity without those structures that have been put in place by the government. It's a very good thing that has been put in. Instead of reviewing it, they should be strengthened. I think there must be enforcement. There must be also that the governments must do more to support the local capacity. because the only people that can develop the infrastructure of Nigeria is through the local manufacturing. So we cannot depend on importation. We found out that in Nigeria today, most things are being imported, but there's a need to build up and to support our local companies and manufacturing companies so that they can grow up to the level that is required. And some of this policy that's been put in place should be strengthening, not to be rebuilt. Thank you.
Now, some analysts have accused the manufacturers as being too dependent on imported raw materials, and this is why many of them are not competitive. Yes, you did mention that one of the lessons you guys in the manufacturing sector learned, coming from this COVID-19 pandemic is the fact that you have to, look inwards. But with this issue about manufacturers depending more on imported raw materials. What do you have to say to that?
Well, let me speak specifically on the metering sector, which I play strongly in. When you look at the meter today, 80% of the materials used for meter is polycarbonate. Unfortunately for us in Nigeria, the only thing we produce is polypyrene. But as a manufacturer, we have been working with the Raw Material Institute of Nigeria. As I speak to you, we are working on the process of producing the polycarbonate locally in Nigeria. When you look at Dangote Refinery, what they are trying to produce there is polypyrene. There's a lot of companies in Nigeria that produce, but you just need a single additive. And we have been in touch with the Raw Materials Institute of Nigeria, and we are working with the key stakeholders that can, for us to be able to produce these raw materials locally. We have the capacity locally to produce this raw material. The major issue that those companies are saying before is on the volume. We have gotten the data of the numbers of polycarbonate that is brought into the country in the last few years. We are using that to convince the company like Indorama to be able to produce these polycarbonate for us in Nigeria. Once that is done, I can tell you 80% of the raw material needed to produce our meter is going to be sourced locally. And this is because of our backward integration. So that as a result of that, it's going to reduce the cost of the meter. We will not depend on the forest. The problem of forest would have been solved, and the issue of COVID will not have any significant impact on the cost of the production.
Right. Now, still in your sector, there was a policy that local meter manufacturers like you should be prioritized before imported ones. I mean, patronizing them about at least 30%. How is that playing out?
Yeah, because of the volume of what is required, most of the when you look at the policy of the government, apart from that, under the phase zero, under the phase one, government has been patronizing local meter manufacturer. And because of the problem of forests, it had made most of us to look inward. That's why I was talking to you about the issue of polycarbonate. We are looking inward because so that we can be cost effective. Why, if I can produce a meter at a cheaper price than you bringing it from abroad, why will you be talking about going abroad to bring meter? But government has tried through the effort of the federal government and the CBN, and we believe that with the new phase that we're going into now, which government is even promising to be able to help us to increase on our capacity. And once that is done, there will not be any need for anybody to be bringing meters from abroad. We have the capacity in-house, locally, to produce all the meters that is required in Nigeria.
Now, the AFCFTA commenced in January this year. How have manufacturers like you taken advantage of what the deal offers?
Well, AFTA is a very good program, but unfortunately, many countries have not been able to fully implement it and sign up to it. Though they have signed up within in paper, but all the logistics around it. It's going to be a very good thing. It's going to help a lot of companies in Africa. The implication is that we can do business within ourselves. I can sell my product anywhere within Africa. It's a very good program, but it's just advice is just to encourage as many countries to sort out all their paperwork so that the program can effectively take off.
Now, going into 2022, what are the three most urgent things you think needs to be done to really support the growth of the manufacturing sector?
Yeah, there are three basic things I would like to recommend. When you look at the major problem most manufacturers are crying about is power. There might be need now to have a segmented industrial zone. And when you have an industrial zone where you encourage most industry to go and establish in this zone as it's been done all over the world, then anybody that wanted to invest in power can bring in any kind of power mix to that industrial zone. So most companies will not necessarily be investing in the infrastructure of power to produce. With that, power, the cost of power, cost of doing business will be reduced. Then another area we're talking about is that we are looking at, just like you already mentioned, to go inward, do a lot of re-engineering in the area of the raw materials that is required to be able to manufacture our product. Once you do that, it will increase the GDP, it will create jobs. A lot of people will be involved in the chain and government. Everything is going to improve in the country. Then, so that we will not depend on the forest, because the demand for forest is too much, and the supply. There's a big gap between demand and supply. But if we can look inward, like we already said, it's going to help and it's going to improve the manufacturing sector. Everything, the technology, the material, and everything is in-house in Nigeria. We only need to look inward and do a lot of re-engineering. And I think everything's going to be fine.
Now, what is the outlook for the sector in 2022? Even, we are seeing continued rise in COVID-19 cases with this Omicron virus and the threat of another lockdown.
I'm going to speak to the sector, which is the power sector. The outlook looks good because whether you like it or not, you need meters. When power is supplied, you need to be able to prevent against loss, both the HC and C loss. The house has to be metered. So as of today, based on next statistic, we have over 6 million meter customers, which is growing every day. So there is a big opportunity within the sector, even going with or without the COVID. What the COVID has taught us is to look inward, like I said, for our raw materials. But there needs to be a lot of investment. I think a lot of people need to come into the sector. When you look at 6 million meters is a lot. I think this opportunity is going to be available even beyond 2022.
Thank you very much, Engineer Agoro, for sharing your time with us this morning on the program. And have a wonderful Christmas.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
We'll take a break, and when we come back, FX commodities market is next. Do stay with us.